My dear brothers and sisters, first of all, I bring greetings and good wishes from all the 11,354 members of the Indian section of the Theosophical Society. At the outset, I would like to admit that I have been squeezed on one side by the scholarly presentation of Erica, and on the other side, lunch. To add to my woes, I'm only an engineer and management worker and have no theosophical scholarly virtues to show you. My presentation will only be to the point in my style. The good news is that you will have to tolerate me only for 1 hour. I would like to thank Erica and the organizers of the European School of Theosophy for inviting me to this intellectual conference at such a beautiful place. They have been excellent hosts, taking care of all my needs, even allowing me to promote the upcoming Varanasi International Convention. It was a great conference where like-minded people from several parts of the world met together. A Nobel Peace Laureate once said, "Walk together, talk together, sit together, eat together, stay together, pray together. O ye people of this earth, then and only then shall ye have peace." Well, we have walked together, talked together, sat together, and ate a lot together, and we have prayed together and stayed together. Hence, we have contributed to the peace in the world. With this, let me get to my presentation. Here is the flow of my presentation. I will start with the introduction. Then I'll be giving 10 definitions of reincarnation. I'll be talking about the cause of reincarnation. Then I'll be talking to you about the process of reincarnation, and then I'll conclude the presentation. As I glance around this august gathering, I find most of us are at least about 50 or 60 or even 70 years of age. It is very appropriate then the European School of Theosophy has chosen this theme on reincarnation. During my younger days, I had not given much consideration to the thought of reincarnation. But reaching the age of 70 now, here I am ready to talk to you on reincarnation. Is this world rewarded appropriately? Are the right people rewarded and the wrong punished? Observations tell us that it is not so. We see so many cases where the innocent is punished and the criminal goes scot-free. We also see that mediocre people get high ranks while worthy people get hardship and despair. Religious institutions trying to help mankind are slowly losing ground. People applaud the successful trickster, and the strongholds of vice are apparently becoming even more strongly entrenched. Goodness and transparency in a business is a handicap these days, and in the marketplace, a saint is a failure and the gambler supreme. If all souls are equal at birth, why are human destinies so terribly unequal? Is it all a matter of chance? Can we conceive of a divinely ordered universe in which such matters as human life are left to the blind working of chance? Is it not significant that all other events in the physical universe are guided by natural law? In this world, Human equality is a myth. We are unequal physically, mentally, morally, and spiritually. While opportunity and limitation do not go as per our plans. Some men have strong and healthy bodies, others are frail and diseased. Some have grace and physical refinement, others are crude and rude. Some have quick and brilliant brains, others are dull and limited in thought. Think, too, how completely our standing in the world is affected by what we are physically. Is there even a trace of equality in nature? Religions have tried to blame the will of God for all this. It is not the right thing because it makes God directly responsible for all the suffering of the world. These problems of the modern world seem impossible to be solved, and because of that, they make the teachings of religion ineffective and crush the hopes of people. A master key is needed to solve these problems and to make real again the life of the Spirit, to make strong the faltering trust in the goodness of God and the purpose of life. In reincarnation, that master key is found. The human consciousness exists before birth and even before conception. This is the first fundamental fact of reincarnation. The second great fact of reincarnation is that the soul or conscious self of a human being is a growing thing, and that its development is extended over an enormous period of time. The third fact is that the chief purpose of reincarnation is education. Fourthly, all logical reasoning is in favor of the pre-existence of the soul with the associate idea of reincarnation. For we can then explain that the differences between people that I explained just now are due to the difference in soul age. Fifthly, reincarnation brings with it the assurance that there is a moral law constantly operative in the universe by pointing out that our individual destinies are self-made. Sixthly, reincarnation brings the idea of perfection within reach, for reincarnation means unlimited opportunity. Seventhly, those who hold that we live but once on earth seldom realize how lacking in purpose such a life would be in many millions of cases. We all know that millions of children, instead of growing to maturity, die after a few months or even few hours of life. Eighthly, our past actions are reacting upon us now in the form of physical environment and circumstances. Our past thoughts are the builders of our character. Our past desires are determining our present opportunities. It has been stated by some people that reincarnation ignores heredity. On the contrary, it explains many of its problems. Is it not obvious that in the short span of a single life on earth, we cannot repay all the physical and moral debts we have contracted? On the other side, our innate faculties indicate the interests and activities of other incarnations. One of the most easily recognizable form of the memory of past lives is genius. Another interesting form of memory is that revealed in sudden friendships. Two people meet for the first time, and the moment they clasp hands or even catch sight of one another, a swift, intuitive friendship springs up, which time can neither diminish nor improve. From the reincarnational point of view, fears and phobias are half memories of terrifying events which took place in a previous life. By a series of hypnotic experiments carried out many years ago, Colonel de Roches, a distinguished scientist of Paris, apparently forced the consciousness of a woman back over 4 preceding incarnations. Young children remember parts of their past incarnations much more frequently than adults, probably because the child brain is so much more plastic to impressions. All these are facts of reincarnation. So reincarnation gives perspective, a true sense of values, and the feeling of eternity. It awakens wonder and stirs our imagination. It is an inspiration to a poet, a light to a philosopher, a joy to a saint, for it tells of the way to God. What teaching can most quickly bring humanity to the full realization that God does exist and that there is a moral law, because whatever seeds of good and evil an individual sows in the field of life, the harvests grown must be reaped by him alone. Reincarnation is that teaching, and it is therefore the hope of the world. Let us first look at the various definitions. I have 10 definitions of reincarnation to give you a complete idea of all what people think reincarnation is. The noun reincarnation comes from the Latin roots, re meaning again and incarnate meaning to make flesh. Reincarnation that then means that after death, a person's soul transmigrates to or is reborn in another body. It is a second or new birth. It is the incarnation or embodiment of a soul in a new form or body after it has left the old one at physical death. The words rebirth, metempsychosis, and transmigration of soul are synonyms of reincarnation. There are some more definitions and explanations of reincarnation to further clarify its meaning. Reincarnation is a philosophical or religious concept that an aspect of a living being starts a new life in a different physical body or form after each biological death. It is also called rebirth or transmigration and is a part of the samsara doctrine of cyclic existence. Reincarnation means the same thing as re-embodiment and rebirth. It is the human soul returning to the earth again and again and taking up residence each time in a new physical body in order to continue the soul's progressive journey of inner evolution, advancement, development, and unfoldment. Death is not the end, and birth is not the beginning. There are 3 possibilities regarding what happens to us when we die. There is the view of the materialists and atheists who say that we are nothing more than a lump of soulless, purposeless matter, and that we simply cease to be when the physical body dies. Secondly, there is a one life only view held by some religions who maintain that the soul only lives once on earth and that after the body dies, the soul either goes to heaven for all eternity or burns in hell for all eternity. The third possibility is that of an ongoing process of reincarnation. Today, about 30% people in the West say they believe in reincarnation, and it has been a standard belief in much of the East for thousands of years, having its origin in Hinduism, which is the world's oldest religion. It is also a central feature of Buddhism and other Indic religions. Human beings have the freedom to decide which of these possibilities sounds the most reasonable and plausible to them. Reincarnation is the perpetual progress for each divine soul in an evolution from the outward into the inward, from the material to the spiritual, arriving at the end of each stage at absolute unity with the divine principle. From strength to strength, from the beauty and perfection of one plane to the greater beauty and perfection of another, with accessions of new glory, of fresh knowledge and power in each cycle, such is the journey of every ego. This is done through reincarnation. H.P. Blavatsky defined reincarnation or rebirth as the one universal doctrine which taught that the ego is born on this earth an innumerable number of times. In her times, it was denied by Christians who appeared to have misunderstood the teachings of their own gospels. Nevertheless, the putting on of flesh periodically and throughout long cycles by the higher human soul, or buddhi, manas, or ego, is taught in the Bible as it is in all other ancient scriptures, and resurrection means only the rebirth of the ego in another form or reincarnation. Hence, Theosophy rejects the idea of a new soul created for every newly born baby. HPB mentions in the Key to Theosophy on reincarnation that what reincarnates is the spiritual thinking ego, the permanent principle in man that is connected with every personality it inhabits on earth. HPB says that the doctrine of reincarnation cannot be invalidated because of the loss of memory in each of us of our previous incarnation. She added that there is a great difference between the three accepted forms of memory: remembrance, recollection, and reminiscence. Memory is simply an innate power in thinking beings and even in animals of reproducing past impressions by an association of ideas principally suggested by objective things or by some action on our external sensory organs. Memory is a faculty depending entirely on the more or less healthy and normal functioning of our physical brain. And remembrance and recollection are the attributes and handmaidens of this memory. However, reminiscence is an entirely different thing. Locke, speaking of recollection and remembrance, says, when an idea again recurs without the operation of the like object on the external sensory, it is remembrance. If it be sought after by mind and with pain and endeavor found and brought again into the view, it is recollection. HPB says that reminiscence is no faculty or attribute of our physical memory, but an intuitional perception apart from and outside our physical brain. While memory is physical and evanescent and depends on the physiological conditions of the brain, reminiscence is the memory of the soul. And it is this memory which gives the assurance to almost every human being of his having lived before and having to live again. Indeed, as Wordsworth has said, our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. The soul that rises with us, or life's star, hath everything had its setting, and cometh from afar. The meaning of reincarnation is very well explained by Dr. Annie Besant when she writes, let us start with a clear understanding of what is meant by reincarnation. So far as the derivation of the word is concerned, any repeated entering into a physical or fleshly covering might be included thereunder. It certainly implies the existence of something relatively permanent that enters into and inhabits successive somethings relatively impermanent. But the word tells us nothing of the nature of these relatively permanent and impermanent somethings, save that the impermanent habitations are of flesh. Another word often used as synonymous with reincarnation, the word metempsychosis, suggests the other side of the transaction. Here the habitation is ignored and the stress is laid on the transit of the psyche, the relatively permanent. Putting the two together as descriptive of the whole idea, we should have the entry of a psyche or soul into successive bodies of flesh. And though the word soul is open to serious objections from its looseness and its theological connotations, it may stand for the moment as representing in the minds of most people a form of existence which outlasts the physical frame with which it was connected during a life on earth. In this general sense, apart from any special exoteric or esoteric teaching, reincarnation and metempsychosis are words which denote a theory of existence, according to which a form of visible matter is inhabited by a more ethereal principle which outlives its physical encasement, and on the death of the latter passes on immediately or after an interval to dwell in some other frame. Never perhaps has this doctrine in its loftiest form been put more clearly or more beautifully than in the famous encouragement of Arjuna by Krishna given in the Bhagavad Gita. These bodies of the embodied one who is eternal, indestructible and boundless are known as finite. He who regardeth this as a slayer and he who thinketh he is slain, both of them are ignorant. He slayeth not, nor is he slain. He is not born, nor doth he die, nor having been ceaseth by any more to be. Unborn, perpetual, eternal, and ancient, he is not slain when the body is slaughtered. Who knoweth him indestructible, unborn, undiminishing, how can that man slay, O Partha, or cause to be slain? Partha is the name of Krishna, as you know. As a man casting off worn out garments taketh new ones, so the dweller in the body casting off worn out bodies entereth into others that are new. Weapons cleave him not, nor fire burneth him, nor waters wet him, nor wind drieth him away. Indivisible he, incombustible he, and indeed neither to be wetted nor dried away. Perpetual, all-pervasive, stable, immovable, ancient, unmanifest, unthinkable, immutable, he is called. Therefore, knowing him as such, thou should not grieve. This is what Krishna is telling Arjuna at the point when Arjuna is refusing to participate in the war. The theory of reincarnation, then, is an esoteric philosophy, asserts the existence of a living and individualized principle which dwells in and informs the body of a man, and which, on the death of the body, passes into another body after a longer or shorter interval. Thus, successively, bodily lives are linked together like pearls, strung upon a thread, the thread being the living principles, the pearls upon it are the separate human lives. And the last definition, so we may define reincarnation by saying that it is a plan whereby imperishable conscious beings are supplied with physical bodies appropriate to their stage of growth, and through which they can come in contact with the lessons of physical life. And now I will proceed to the cause of reincarnation. Having dealt with at length on what is reincarnation, let us now look at its cause. The main purpose of reincarnation is education. The fundamental cause of reincarnation, as of all manifestation, is the desire for active life, the thirst for feeling of existence. Some deep-lying essence of nature, obvious in its workings, but not able to understand as to its origin and reason, shows as the law of periodicity. Madame Blavatsky mentions in The Secret Doctrine that an alternation such as that of day and night, life and death, sleeping and walking, is a fact so common, so perfectly universal, and without exception, that it is easy to understand that in it we see one of the absolutely fundamental laws of the universe. The ebb and flow everywhere, the rhythm which is the systole and diastole of the cosmic heart, is seen on every hand. But the reason for it escapes us. We cannot say why things should be so. We can only see that so they are. And in the esoteric philosophy, this same law is recognized as extending to the emanation and reabsorption of universes, the night and day of Brahma, the outbreathing and the inbreathing of the great breath. Another cause of reincarnation is the desires of the soul. Its unfulfilled desires bring it back. Now, in each case, in each body, as desires are fulfilled, it creates new ones. It must be absorbed into the self and thereby end rebirth. Only when the nature of the desire is realized by the student, he will understand why its destruction is necessary to the perfecting of the spiritual man. Till the harvest of experience has been gathered, desire will remain. For only by feeding on that harvested experience can growth be nourished and sustained. So while experience still is lacking, the thirst for it remains unslacked, and the ego will return to earth again and again. But its fetters must fall off one by one as the ego reaches the perfecting of his tabernacle. For desire is personal and therefore selfish. And when desire prompts action, the purity of the action is tainted. The condition of arhatship is unceasing activity without any personal returns. The arhat must give all light to all, but take from none. I remember asking a question to Dr. Radha Bernier once, when I said that when Gandhiji was doing all these things with so much of determination, with so much of aggression, wouldn't it be considered wrong? And she just told me one thing. Remember, Gandhiji was not doing anything for himself. It was the most unselfish thing that he was doing for the good of so many people in the country. Hence, in the upward climbing, one desire after another must be unlocked. Desire for personal enjoyment, personal pleasure, personal gain, personal loves, personal attainments, and last and the least of all, desire for personal perfection, for the personal self must be lost in the one self that is self of all that lives. The second cause of reincarnation is that the soul has lessons to learn. The experience and choices of a lifetime serve as lessons for the soul once the life is completed. After death, or to say after the soul exits from the physical realm, the soul and its guides review what happened during the life and what lessons can be learned from it. The soul not only reviews its own experiences and choices, but also discovers the effects of its own choices on others during the life. For example, the decision to steal a sum of money at one point may have caused the victim significant hardship and anxiety. The soul learns that all choices have experiential consequences, not just for the self, but for everyone involved. Thus, one can see how reincarnation helps the souls to learn their lessons, improve, and evolve. The fifth cause of reincarnation is to balance the soul according to its deeds and its needs. In the words of the Upanishads, which are the foundational scriptures of Hindu philosophy, the nature of each body in which the soul reincarnates is according to our deeds and our needs. Our deeds of the past have determined the body, the outer shell, which we have to put up with for this present lifetime, and it is also the most fitting and suitable body to help meet the soul's needs for its inner evolution, development, and the learning of its lessons in this life. The sixth cause of reincarnation is to adjust the balance of the soul in possessing bodies belonging to one particular gender. Some people feel as if they are women trapped in a man's body, or a man trapped in a woman's body. This tends to indicate or suggest that the soul has spent several of its most recent lifetimes in a continuous succession of bodies belonging to one particular gender. The soul will therefore have become particularly feminized or masculinized, depending on which gender it was. We should remember that in reality, the soul is neither male nor female. A very feminized soul will understandably hate finding itself in a male body, as it will seem very unnatural and foreign. But if the feminized soul is now in a male body, or the masculinized soul now in a female body, it would apparently be to adjust the balance, since we can never make real or ongoing progress just by being solely a woman or solely a man in all our physical incarnations. The seventh cause of reincarnation is to make the soul fully realize its own divine nature, or its absolute oneness with the divine, and thus with all life, and has not yet re-become in consciousness that which it truly and really is. The soul is not just a myth or an illusion or a relic of scientific superstition. All human beings are a combination of physical, mortal body and non-physical, immortal soul. It is the absolute essence of a person, the only true answer to the question, who am I? It is who one always is, regardless of how one feels or what one believes or how one perceives oneself. From the body's perspective, the soul is the conscious, animating life force within it. From the soul's perspective, the body is the vehicle for inhabiting the physical world and experiencing physical existence. The soul is pure consciousness, pure energy, pure being. It exists on a timeless, non-physical level of reality. It is a piece of spirit, or God, or source, a spark of divine light and love, a fragment of absolute perfection. The soul exists, and reincarnation makes it realize what it is. The eighth cause of reincarnation is the fact that for every soul, evolution is its goal. The soul evolves most effectively in physical form. Evolution of the soul comes about through individual experience and choice. And that is why when people sometimes tell that by just going into a cave and praying is no way of evolving. You got to live in the world, you got to live with people, and then evolve. A soul evolves most effectively by facing and making choices as a separate individual, making choices big and small, and experiencing the effects of each choice. To do so, the soul incarnates. That is, the soul fuses with a physical body for a whole lifetime from birth to death. By doing so, the soul gets to experience being physically limited and physically separated from others and from all that is. This is actually an illusion, a trick of the senses, as the soul itself is never really limited or separate. But the illusion creates enough desire, fear, and other pressures to cause the soul to experience conflicts and dilemmas and to make choices. It also puts the soul's own perceptions, feelings, and decisions under the microscope, as it were. As has been said before, the experience and choices of a lifetime serve as lessons for the soul once the life is completed. The ninth cause of reincarnation is the desire of the soul for active life, thirst for sentient existence. Hence, the Hindus have pictured the god or desire as the impulse to manifestation. Karma, again, is in the Rig Veda the personification of that feeling which leads and propels to creation. It was the fast movement that stirred the One after its manifestation from the purely abstract principle to create. Desire first arose in it, which was the primal germ of mind, and which sages, searching with their intellect, have discovered to be the bond. Thus, karma, the individual as for the cosmos, becomes the primary cause of reincarnation. As desires differentiates into desires, these chains down the thinker to earth and bring him back time after time to rebirth. The 10th cause of reincarnation is for the soul to undergo the full range of meaningful experience. One lifetime is not enough to experience the whole gamut of life circumstances and to make all choices. For example, the soul needs to experience life as both male and female, as both victim and perpetrator, as both student and teacher. Hence, the soul reincarnates many times over in order to experience the full spectrum of life. The 11th cause of reincarnation of a soul is for it to enjoy the fruits of good karma. And now let us look at the last part, the process of reincarnation. After understanding reincarnation and studying the 11 causes, let us find out the process of reincarnation. Souls do not normally reincarnate instantly after death. It is not a case of the soul leaving one body and then instantly entering that of a body which is about to be born. Usually, there is a period of several decades between one life and the next, during which the soul recuperates, considers the lessons learned from the past life, and plans its next life. It is during this time when the soul experiences its own personal state of heaven, created unwittingly out of its own consciousness and matching exactly the afterlife the person had believed in and expected during the lifetime just ended. Devachan, a period in which the soul recuperates considers the lessons learned in his last life and plans its next life, a personal state of heaven. That is what is Devachan. It is under a Tibetan name that is given to this process. Devachan lasts in exact proportion to the amount and force of good or positive karma that the soul created during the lifetime just ended. When the soul has reaped the full fruit of this good karma in its blissful Devanchik experience, the process of reincarnation occurs. The rate at which this happens varies from soul to soul and depends on a number of factors like the amount of good karma from the last incarnation and how spiritual and pure the soul is. It can be with a few years or even thousands of years before it will reincarnate. One thing is certain, that the human soul never reincarnates as an animal, tree, plant, stone, or any other thing except a human being. I had read at a few places that this can happen, but the books of theosophy that I have read do not agree with that. Additionally, the soul does not consciously choose its parents nor any other things like location, setting, and circumstances. These are determined by soul's own karma, by causes that soul has previously set in motion when on earth before, the effects of which must now be worked out. Also, the nature of each body in which the soul reincarnates is according to the soul's deeds and needs for its advancement at this particular point in its evolution. All human beings are, in reality, spiritual beings on a human journey. We reincarnate as human beings in order to evolve as souls. The second part is that the journey of a soul is really a process of evolving. This means growing in consciousness, steadily progressing through different levels or stages of consciousness by taking on challenging experiences in physical form. These cause us to make important soul-searching choices and call upon us to discover our inner resources. This is how we learn who we are and how to become all that we are. Choice and the ramification of choice provide the essential lessons of life. In a very real sense, one chooses to be here in order to make choices. The third step in the process of reincarnation is that we go through 5 major stages of evolution through reincarnation. Within each stage, there are 7 levels to be completed. So, we go through 35 steps of evolution through reincarnation. Each step usually requires more than 1 lifetime to complete. Typically, the entire journey of 35 steps takes well over 100 lifetimes. Let us examine the 5 stages of soul evolution. Each of the 5 stages corresponds to a specific level of development in capability, mode of consciousness, and self-awareness within the individual soul. As the soul goes through each stage, the focus changes, more experience is gained, and consciousness expands. As a result, the way of relating to others also changes. Let us look at the first stage. The first stage is the infant soul. The infant souls focus on immediate survival needs. They flourish in simple environments close to nature, such as remote tribes or rural, pastoral settings. Psychologically, infant souls are naive, impulsive, and pre-conventional, acting on impulse or habit with little or no thought for consequences. While they may lack the moral principles, social graces, and cultural understandings of older souls, infant souls are in a sense completely innocent, being without pretense or agenda. Next, you have the baby souls. This is the stage 2. Baby souls think a great deal about the rights and wrongs of their action in contrast to infant souls. Their lives are about safety, security, structure and order, rigidly so. They like to live in communities that are highly principled and civilized. They are strictly conventional and conformist. Both their beliefs and their actions are largely rule bound, so they are often ultra conservative, traditionalist, orthodox, upright, moralistic, religiously devout, and mindful of law and order. They are acutely aware of the rights and wrongs of people's actions, including their own, though they have little insight into the motives behind them. The third stage is the young soul. Young souls tend to be extrovert, outward bound, worldly, frenetically energetic, brash, competitive, political, ambitious, and individualistic. Life at this stage is about thinking for oneself and asserting oneself as an individual. They are generally attracted to some form of worldly success, fame, fortune, power, glory, etc. They are very aware of their own agenda, but do not really question it. The fourth stage is the mature soul. Mature souls tend to be more effective than younger souls, with a growing understanding of self, growing empathy for others, and a desire for authenticity in both. Life is less about proving oneself and more about exploring right relationship. Mature soul consciousness is no longer egocentric in the sense of being limited to one's own perspective and agenda, but is capable of accommodating multiple perspectives and different agendas. Mature souls tend to question everything, including their own motives, and are prone to do a lot of soul searching. And finally, the old soul, the stage 5. Old souls tend to exude some degree of depth and wisdom that is quite obvious. For having moved beyond the stresses and conflicts of the mature soul, old souls have a growing sense of inner peace and freedom. The freedom to enjoy being very much in the world, but not of it. Compared to younger souls, they are relatively calm, measured, untroubled, and stable, unattached to social structures and cultural expectations, being sure of their own existence and inner strengths and their compassion for others. For old souls, the aim of life is to find true self-expression and fulfillment. Late-stage old souls find themselves obviously participating in the evolution of all that is, and often focus on teaching spiritual wisdom with great compassion. There are 7 discrete learning steps in each of the 5 stages that I mentioned. Within each stage of reincarnation, there are 7 discrete learning steps to go through. For example, we begin the whole journey as step 1, as infant souls. Learn that lesson, then undertake step 2 as infant souls, and so on. On completing the 7th step of the infant stage, we then begin with the first step of the baby stage. The early steps in any stage are about experiencing life at this new stage of evolution, learning the essential lessons through appropriate experiences. The later steps are about expressing those lessons, demonstrating this level of consciousness in action. The first step of any stage is like putting a toe in the water. The final step or level of any stage is like teaching others how to swim. And finally, about the time frame of this whole journey, the whole journey through 5 stages with 7 steps in each, with a total of 35 steps, is likely to take of the order of 7,000 to 8,000 years, but possibly a lot more if the population is low and opportunities to incarnate are few. I will end by just saying that let us all seriously work to progress on this lovely journey of life. Thank you very much.